Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Tonight on the show, India's neighborhood is shifting. What is the US military doing in Bangladesh and should New Delhi be worried? We'll discuss that. Also, a first of its kind visit in China. Pakistan's President Zardari has toured a Chinese jet factory, the one that is at the center of weapons supply to Pakistan. How should India read this? In West Asia, Netanyahu's war may cost Israel long years of isolation. A new United Nations report is out. It accuses Israel of committing genocide in Gaza. Meanwhile, in Washington, Trump has found a new obsession. He's unleashing his military power on Venezuela. We'll talk about why this is his latest obsession. In Eastern Europe, Belarus and Russia are holding military drills. We'll tell you why China stands to lose. Back in America, Trump wants to scrap quarterly earnings reports. Is it a bold idea or just another gimmick? We'll discuss. From Africa, a chilling update. ISIS and Al-Qaeda are expanding using TikTok and even Starlink. Also, Discord is in the spotlight, once a gamer's chat room. It is now a platform for revolutions and confessions. A report on mummies, the world's oldest, have been discovered in Southeast Asia. And a question. Why is there no law that protects women in political parties from sexual harassment? India's top court says the existing law does not apply to them. We'll talk about this, all this and more coming up. The headlines first. India and the US resumed trade talks. New Delhi says the meeting was positive. This was the first face-to-face discussion since Donald Trump imposed punitive tariffs on India over the purchase of Russian oil. But recently, Trump hailed India-US ties, a move which was reciprocated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The UK prepares a royal welcome for Donald Trump. This will be the US President's second state visit to the United Kingdom. Security has been tightened amid fears of protests. Trump will be honored with a carriage procession with King Charles. The two countries are set to sign agreements worth more than $10 billion. The Philippines accuses the Chinese Coast Guard of a water cannon attack. But Beijing says the Philippine ship deliberately rammed into a Chinese vessel. This incident took place near a disputed shoal in the South China Sea. This is the latest confrontation between Manila and Beijing in the crucial waterway, which China claims almost entirely as its own. East Timor's police clash with protesters for the second consecutive day. The unrest is over a plan to buy SUVs for lawmakers. East Timor is one of Southeast Asia's poorest nations. The demonstrators are mostly university students. Several political parties now say they will ask the parliament to cancel the plan. And a Japanese political party says it will install an artificial intelligence leader after its founder quit following a poor showing in the recent elections. The Path to Rebirth Party was launched in January. Details about its AI leader are yet to be decided, including when and how it will be implemented. A mysterious warplane, a series of military drills, and a shaky neighbor vulnerable to meddling. I'm not describing some imaginary spy thriller. This could be happening in India's neighborhood, right next door in Bangladesh. Look at the latest development. A US Air Force plane landed in Chittagong on Sunday. This is a C-130J Super Hercules. This plane is usually stationed in Japan, but this weekend it landed at the Shah Amanat Airport. Like I said, it's located in Chittagong in Bangladesh. It is very close to India's northeast and Myanmar. And this is not an isolated military move. It's part of a series of drills and surveys by the US military, which makes you wonder, what is the US up to and should India be worried? Let's look at the background first. Bangladesh was plunged into chaos last July. That's when radical students hit the streets in protest. They forced Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to flee. After that, an interim ruler took over, Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus. Now, Yunus has extremely close ties to the United States, so speculation was rife about US meddling. Many analysts said that Washington had toppled Sheikh Hasina. And these latest military moves must be seen in this backdrop, in the backdrop of alleged US meddling. Now look at their recent moves. In late July, Bangladesh and America conducted a joint drill. It was called Tiger Lightning. Both armies practiced counter-terror ops and jungle missions. Then in early August, another joint drill was held. This one was called Tiger Shark. It involved special forces from both sides. Interestingly, US weapons were used in this drill. Then yesterday, a third drill began. It's called Pacific Angel 25-3. It involves the air forces of Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and the US. Chances are that's why the Super Hercules flew over from Japan to take part in these drills. Either way, it's a lot of drills in a short period of time, 3 in just 60 days. And it's not been business as usual. Consider what happened earlier this month. A US Special Forces soldier was found dead in Dhaka. He went to Bangladesh in April. Months later, he was found in a posh Dhaka hotel. Again, it does sound like a spy thriller, but what exactly happened to this soldier? The US Embassy won't say. They have been reluctant to share details. Reports say Indian agencies were also concerned by this incident. They feared a US plot in the region. Which brings us to present day. What is the US up to in Bangladesh, and should New Delhi be worried? Some reports indicate a Myanmar angle. As you know, Myanmar has been gripped by a civil war. The ruling junta is fighting a rebel alliance. Apparently, both China and the US are courting these rebels. And this is where Dhaka is key. Bangladesh and Myanmar share a small border. It is just 271 kilometers long, but this border connects Chittagong in Bangladesh to the Rakhine state in Myanmar. And this border is a flashpoint. Earlier this year, the United Nations chief made a proposal. He called for an aid corridor from Chittagong to Myanmar. On paper, I know it sounds noble, but aid corridors inevitably become political. They're often used to ferry weapons and logistical support. Muhammad Yunus and his team okayed the corridor, but the Bangladesh army pushed back. They feared it would weaken Dhaka's sovereignty.
The army will not compromise on issues related to the corridor, national security, and national sovereignty. After August 5, 2024, the army has coordinated with everyone for the sake of the country.
So the corridor did not happen, but these latest drills are happening in the same area near the Chittagong Hills. So clearly the US has not abandoned its project. Chittagong gives them access to Myanmar. It also gives them access to India's northeast, which brings us to the second question. Should India be worried? Well, there are multiple aspects to this. For starters, some of these drills have been happening for years, like the Tiger Shark, which dates back to the year 2009. But times have changed. India used to have an ally in Dhaka. Now there is Muhammad Yunus, and he is anything but an ally. He has single-handedly destroyed India-Bangladesh ties, and in that background, these drills should worry India. At the same time, we should not be myopic, because America is not the only challenge in Bangladesh for us. China is making inroads too. Consider the Teesta River project. It's a $500 million mega plan to manage the Teesta River. Sheikh Hasina's government wanted India to do it, but Yunus is giving it to China. Reports say a Chinese team will visit Bangladesh soon. Then there is military cooperation. Bangladesh's Air Force fleet is aging. One of their trainer jets crashed in recent months. So guess what? Dhaka is looking to buy China's J-10 fighter jets. So my point is quite simple. Both America and China have designs in Bangladesh. It is a strategically located country. China is building ports in Bangladesh and Myanmar. It will offer them something they don't have. A presence in the eastern Indian Ocean. A direct access to the Bay of Bengal. That's what China gets. For America, the goal is the opposite, to block China's access to the Indian Ocean. And of course, to keep tabs on India. New Delhi must be mindful of both these ambitions. And Dhaka? Well, they are playing a dangerous game. Yunus is caught in the middle of a great power rivalry. Any mistake could prove to be too costly. Now let's talk about Pakistan. Its president, Asif Ali Zardari, is in China. He is on a 10-day trip. Officially, the visit is ceremonial. The Pakistani presidency is a symbolic position after all. Zardari is not supposed to be involved in the day-to-day running of the government. But I guess you could say the same for the Prime Minister as well. He's just a placeholder. It is no secret that the real power lies with the army in Pakistan. But for now, let's go back to the visit. Why is President Zardari in China and what is he up to? Look at these pictures. The Pakistani president was taken to a fighter jet factory in China. You can see him taking a tour of the facility, and he was not alone. Zardari was accompanied by his daughter, Asifa Bhutto Zardari. She also happens to be the First Lady of Pakistan. She's the president's daughter. They call her the First Lady. And his son was with him too. You may know of him. His name is Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. At one point, he was Pakistan's foreign minister. So together, they visited the jet factory in China, and these pictures were released by the Pakistani side. The factory belongs to AVIC. AVIC stands for Aviation Industry Corporation of China. It is a state-owned aircraft maker. It builds drones, fighters, and stealth jets. For Pakistan, AVIC is a crucial supplier. It makes the J-10 fighter jet. It also co-produces the JF-17 jet. Now, both planes are in the Pakistan Air Force fleet. Plus, AVIC supplies most of Pakistan's advanced jets. It trains their engineers and it supports Pakistan's own aircraft industry. As you know, around 80% of Pakistan's weapons come from China, and most of it flows through AVIC. So this visit by Zardari was not routine. In fact, it was the first of its kind. Reports say this was the first time a foreign head of state toured this facility. Zardari was briefed on the J-10 fighter. It's the same jet that Pakistan used against India during Operation Sindoor. He was also updated about the J-20 program, which is China's fifth-generation fighter. Apart from this, Zardari was shown drones and command systems, basically all the equipment that Pakistan may want to buy. So what did the visit achieve? So far, no new deals have been announced, but the pictures say it all. China opened a sensitive military site to a Pakistani leader. This signals trust, it signals commitment. Beijing is willing to share advanced defense technology with Pakistan, and we witnessed this support during Operation Sindoor, when China shared both military hardware as well as intelligence with Pakistan. So now this support could be expanding. At least that's how India should see it. This challenge is not new for New Delhi. The only way they can respond is by beefing up their own systems. And as we speak, the Indian Air Force is also being upgraded. The IAF is set to receive new jets, the Tejas Mk-1A fighter jets. Next month, India will receive 2 of these. The Mk-1A is a multi-role aircraft. It is a highly advanced, fast and nimble aircraft. It can operate in the skies, carry out surgical strikes on the enemy, and conduct missions over the sea. The induction of these planes has been delayed for nearly 2 years now. So finally, their deliveries would be welcome news. Discussions are also underway to procure new Rafale jets. The IAF has floated a new proposal. They want to buy 114 new Rafale jets. These will be built in India under the Make in India program. And if this deal happens, it will be one of the biggest defense contracts ever. So India is making moves on multiple fronts. New Tejas jets at home, new Rafale fighters, and upgrades to existing squadrons, all to match the rapid modernization in the region. There's a new sense of urgency after Operation Sindoor. Across the region, militaries are speeding up their upgrades. Pakistan is deepening its defense ties with China. It is looking to acquire new jets, drones and technology from Beijing. India is focusing on self-reliance. It is investing in indigenous fighters like the Tejas. At the same time, it is adding new capabilities through targeted acquisitions. Recently, India has also been re-engaging with China. There have been high-level talks. Prime Minister Modi even visited China a few weeks ago to attend the SCO summit. But despite these breakthroughs, the trust deficit remains, and Zardari's tour of a Chinese military facility does not help. It serves as a reminder to India that it must keep its guard up. Irrespective of the normalization with China, India must always be prepared for a two-front military challenge. There comes a point in every long war when the pictures begin to look the same. Smoke rising in endless columns, buildings collapsing into dust, families running with nothing, children left starving. Gaza has given the world these images 1,000 times over. The latest episode, as you know, began on October 7, 2023. That's when Hamas attacked Israel. It was nearly 2 years ago. And now, as another October 7th approaches, the world has grown numb. It has learned to scroll past the suffering. But the war is not over. In fact, today Israel has launched yet another ground offensive in Gaza. It's a full-scale invasion of Gaza City. This city is the largest in Gaza, and Israel wants full control over it. It says Gaza City is Hamas's last major stronghold, so to end the war, Israel must control the city. Last night, they began ramping up their military operations. There's been aerial bombardment. High rises have been reduced to rubble, and Gazans have been left with no other options. They are once again forced to flee. But here is where the story takes a darker turn. This is not your typical war, if there is such a thing. This is much worse. A United Nations Commission has released a report. It says Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. Not war crimes, not excessive force, but genocide. This is the most authoritative UN report to date. It has 72 pages of evidence. They list 4 acts of genocide: the killing of Palestinians, the serious bodily and mental harm, the deliberate acts of destruction, and the measures to prevent births in Gaza. This UN report also names Israeli leaders, the likes of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Isaac Herzog.
Genocide is occurring in Gaza. We haven't gone into Palestine yet. We will, because this is a permanent commission. And we named the 3 individuals that we felt were responsible. And we said, and the one is the Prime Minister, the other the President, and the third is the former Minister of Defense. And we said that since they acted as agents of the state, then the state of Israel is responsible.
Israel, of course, denies all of it. The Foreign Ministry has called the UN report, and I'm quoting, distorted and false. It says the Commission is relying on Hamas propaganda. It calls for the entire body to be abolished, and this is not new. For years, Israel has accused the Human Rights Council of bias. So it only sees this latest UN report as more proof of that bias.
Israel categorically rejects the libelous rant published today by this Commission of Inquiry. It spreads the malicious genocide narrative. The report diverges from the mandate of the Commission, yet again stressing their biased analysis.
But outside Israel, the word is spreading, and that word is genocide. Israel is being accused of a genocide. US senators are saying it. Genocide scholars are saying it. Israeli human rights groups are saying it, and many countries are hinting at it. South Africa, for instance, has taken Israel to the International Court of Justice, and now even the United Nations is calling it a genocide. So the taboo is broken. And here is the irony. This is a country born in the shadow of genocide. It is now being accused of committing one. Israel is being branded with the very crime it was meant to outlive. Meanwhile, more and more nations have decided to recognize Palestine. On the 22nd of September, France and Saudi Arabia will co-chair a conference in New York. This is to push for the two-state solution. One state for Israelis and another for Palestinians. That's the two-state solution. Israel is, of course, against it. But now the pressure is building. You could say Israel is paying the price for its seemingly endless offensive. When the October 7th attacks happened, the world rallied behind Israel. It pushed for justice. It rushed to support the country. But now Israel is more isolated than ever because Netanyahu refuses to end the war, and he seems prepared for the consequences. He says Israel faces a kind of isolation that could last for years.
So, have they achieved global isolation? No. The United States is with us, as are many other countries. But we currently have a focus problem in Western Europe, and we are acting and will continue to act to lift this siege. Just as we succeeded with the military siege, we will also succeed with the diplomatic siege.
So Netanyahu is confident that Israel will overcome this. But here's the problem. Wars leave rubble and graves. They also leave words, words that cling to them long after the fighting stops. Vietnam had quagmire. Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Gaza now has genocide. This is not just about boycotts or sanctions. This is about history, about how the war is recorded and how it is remembered. So the question is no longer just about who wins on the ground. It's about who survives in memory. Because bombs can destroy buildings, but words can condemn generations. Today, that word is genocide. It will appear in court filings, in human rights reports, and in textbooks yet to be written. Israel says it can outlast the siege. It can outfight its enemies. But this is the war it cannot escape, a war over its place in history. Gaza is a full-blown war, and thousands of kilometers away, another one seems to be brewing. This one's in Latin America. Tensions are rising between the US and Venezuela. The trigger is this: alleged Venezuelan drug boats. It's a constant complaint of Donald Trump. He says Latin American gangs are smuggling drugs into the US. His solution? Blow them up. The latest instance was Monday. The US military destroyed a boat in international waters. Take a look at this. This is the second such attack. A similar boat was blown up last week as well. Again, the reason was the same. Trump believes these boats are carrying drugs. Earlier, such boats would be intercepted. US forces would stop and search them. But Donald Trump is going a step ahead. He's simply blowing them up.
Well, we have proof. All you have to do is look at the cargo that was like it's spattered all over the ocean. Big bags of cocaine and fentanyl all over the place. And it was, plus we have recorded evidence that they were leaving. We've recorded them. It's very careful because we know you people would be after us. We're very careful. The military has been amazing.
There is a human cost here. The first strike killed 11 people. Yesterday's strike killed 3 people. Now, Trump is calling them narco-terrorists, but the fact is there is no evidence yet. No court has indicted these sailors. No video proof has been presented. Trump is basically saying, trust me, bro. And the worst part? It could escalate further because Donald Trump is deploying more firepower to the region. Over the weekend, he moved 10 F-35 jets to Puerto Rico, 10 jets. Puerto Rico is a U.S. island in Central America. There are 7 U.S. warships in this region, plus at least 1 nuclear submarine. That's a lot of firepower, especially for a so-called no-war president. And it raises a lot of questions like, why this obsession over Venezuela? How will Caracas respond? And what is the worst-case scenario? Let's go one by one. The obsession is down to 4 reasons. Why Venezuela? Number 1, it's a pet project of Trump's foreign minister, Marco Rubio. In America, they call him the Secretary of State. Rubio's parents fled communist Cuba to America. He hates the leftist regimes of Latin America, and that includes President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela. Rubio has long demanded their ouster. As a senator, he pushed for an aggressive Latin American policy, and now as foreign minister, he's leading it. There's a bounty on the capture of the Venezuelan president. Recently, Rubio raised it. He raised the bounty. He doubled it to $50 million. In the Venezuelan capital, Caracas, President Maduro singled out Secretary Rubio. He called Rubio the Lord of Death.
¿Quién? Marco Rubio, the Lord of Death and War, as he is now called. Wherever he goes, there is death, there are bombs, there are murdered children. Marco Rubio, the Lord of Death and War, of hatred.
Of course, Rubio is not doing it alone. Clearly, Trump is on board, and that's reason number 2. This policy shows Trump as tough on drug smuggling. Just think about it. What sounds more dramatic and effective? Intercepting an alleged drug boat or blowing up an alleged drug boat? It bolsters Trump's anti-drug credentials. It's also a distraction from his other troubles, like the Epstein files and the tariffs. Now we come to the strategic reason. Number 3, China. Beijing has made inroads in Venezuela. It is a top supplier of arms to Maduro. It is also propping up Venezuela's oil industry. In fact, when tensions rose, Maduro appealed to Xi Jinping. He asked the Chinese president to help. And the response? Well, only statements so far. Nonetheless, it's a worry for the US. They have long tried to keep China away from the Western Hemisphere. And under Donald Trump, this policy has become aggressive. We saw that in Panama. Trump forced Panama to cut ties with a Chinese shipping firm. We saw that in the Caribbean too. Secretary Rubio visited the region in May. Once again, he called for cutting ties with China. Obviously, such pressure will not work against Venezuela. Therefore, Trump is using the military. And reason number 4 is ideological. Trump has been supporting right-wing leaders in Latin America, like Brazil's Jair Bolsonaro, Argentina's Javier Milei, El Salvador's Nayib Bukele. But Nicolas Maduro is from the other camp. He is a leftist leader backed by communist China. And that makes him an obvious target for Donald Trump. So how is Maduro responding to this crisis? Well, for those unaware, Maduro is a colorful character. He's lashing out at Trump and his officials, but with a Maduro twist. Listen to this.
This is not tension. It is outright aggression, judicial aggression when they criminalize us, political aggression with their daily threatening statements, diplomatic aggression, and ongoing military aggression. Venezuela is empowered by international law to comprehensively confront this aggression. As if I was worth more than bin Laden, as if I was worth as much as Darwin Núñez, the great Uruguayan footballer. Any moment now, they might say I'm worth more than Messi. It would be an injustice. No one believes to these immoral and outrageous attacks.
So Maduro is standing firm, but it's a precarious situation. Militarily, Venezuela is no match for the US. So it's unlikely that Nicolas Maduro will look for a fight, which means that the ball is in Donald Trump's court. What will he do next? Will he attack mainland Venezuela? He was asked this question on Sunday. He said, we'll see what happens, meaning it's not off the table. The military campaign could expand. Now, here's the thing. Nobody here is a fan of Nicolas Maduro. He is a leftist dictator. He has rigged elections and he has run his country into poverty. Several Western countries do not even recognize his regime, but that does not justify military action. If you want to oust Maduro, go to the United Nations, impose sanctions to weaken his rule, or get United Nations Security Council clearance for a military operation. That's the way to do it. Trump is doing none of that. Instead, he is using unilateral military force. So much for a non-interventionist president of peace. Our next story is about Zapad 2025. On the surface, it is just another war game. Russia and Belarus are staging their latest round of military drills. But the timing could not have been worse. Russian drones had just crossed NATO airspace. Tensions along the alliance's eastern flank were already high. And then came Poland's decision. Poland decided to seal its border with Belarus. It's supposed to be a precautionary measure. But it's hurting a country that is not even part of this region. I'm talking about China. So how is this border closure in Europe impacting China? And why does China want Poland to open its borders ASAP? Our next report tells you.
Last week, Belarus opened its training grounds to an unusual mix of participants. Russian troops, foreign journalists, even a handful of U.S. military attaches. The occasion was Zapad 2025, the latest in a long-running series of joint Russia-Belarus military drills. On the ground, it looked like a standard exercise. Armored vehicles rumbling through river crossings, artillery crews running through loading drills, and helicopters cutting across the treetops. Moscow and Minsk described the drills as defensive, a rehearsal for how they would respond if attacked. But the timing made neighbors nervous. Just days earlier, Russian drones had crossed into Polish and Romanian airspace during strikes on Ukraine. For NATO countries already on edge, this felt less like routine training and more like intimidation. So, as Zapad 2025 got underway, Poland moved to close its border crossings with Belarus. The decision covered 3 freight rail links, a road crossing for cars, and another for trucks, that effectively froze one of the busiest land corridors between the European Union and its eastern neighbors. Warsaw said the closures would remain until further notice. The move carried consequences far beyond Eastern Europe. Belarus has long been a transit hub for freight moving between China and the EU. Nearly 90% of rail cargo traveling between China and Europe crosses through Poland. By 2024, the value of goods shipped on these trains had risen to more than $25 billion. Blocking the border meant freight trains from China were halted on the Belarusian side. Containers sat waiting at depots, unable to cross. Polish officials admitted the disruption would cause losses but argued that security came first. For Beijing, the timing was particularly difficult. The China-Europe Railway Express is the flagship project linking Chinese factories to European consumers. It is faster than shipping by sea and cheaper than sending goods by air. China sees Poland as a crucial partner in this system. So, when Warsaw closed its border, Beijing made its displeasure clear. Chinese diplomats argue that the trains benefit both sides. Europe receives fast, affordable goods, while Chinese exporters gain access to one of the world's largest markets. Polish leaders see it differently. They argue that borders are part of national defense. The Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski met his Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi, this week in Warsaw. Officially, the two sides spoke of friendship and shared interests. Unofficially, Poland wants Beijing to use its influence to rein Moscow in. Nothing concrete has come out of the talks yet. If the border remains closed only for a short period, businesses can absorb the losses. Containers can be rerouted via slower sea and air routes. But if the closure drags on, costs will rise sharply. In the end, it's a reminder that maps still shape politics as much as missiles do. A line on paper between Poland and Belarus can halt billions in trade, sour relations with Beijing, and raise the stakes with Moscow. For Poland, that border is a shield. For China, it's a bottleneck. And for Russia, it's a pressure point to be tested. In geopolitics, geography isn't just destiny, it's leverage.
A new debate has gripped Wall Street. How often should companies report their earnings? Once in 3 months or once in 6 months? It's not a new debate in the world of finance, but this time it was triggered by US President Donald Trump. Look at his social media post. This is what he's written. Companies and corporations should no longer be forced to report on a quarterly basis, but rather to report on a 6-month basis. This will save money and allow managers to focus on properly running their companies. Now, to be clear, the policy has not changed yet. Trump is merely giving his input to the US regulator, which is the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. The SEC will now review this proposal, and only they can change the rule book. The current rule was introduced way back in 1970. It requires listed companies to publish reports every quarter, basically once in 3 months. The idea was to promote transparency and trust. Quarterly reports equal more frequent updates equal more information, and more information equals better decision making. This was the idea behind the rule, to give investors confidence. So why does Trump want to change it? Well, he feels it's too short term. Managers are always thinking about the next report. Therefore, there is no long-term vision. Clearly, this is Trump's business background talking. He ran companies for decades, and some of those companies were publicly traded. So maybe Trump is speaking from personal experience, or maybe he is worried about the markets. Let me show you a study by Columbia Business School. They found that more than 8,000 companies traded on US exchanges in the 1990s, more than 8,000 firms. Do you know what is the number now? Only 4,000 firms. So the number of listed companies has fallen by 50%, and a lot of them blame regulation, of which quarterly reports is a part. So maybe Trump is trying to revive the stock spirit. Maybe he wants more companies to list in US exchanges. The question is this the right way to go? In fact, this topic is quite divisive. In 2018, 2 finance heavyweights wrote an op-ed. Ace investor Warren Buffett and JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon. In that piece, they call for doing away with quarterly guidance. Now, guidance is different from the earnings report. A report shows profits or losses. A guidance is a projection for the coming months. Now, Warren Buffett and Jamie Dimon batted against it, and listen to what they wrote. I'm quoting again. In our experience, quarterly earnings guidance often leads to an unhealthy focus on short-term profits at the expense of long-term strategy, growth, and sustainability. Now, the spirit of this argument was the same as Donald Trump's. Short-term thinking is hurting America. Over in Wall Street, alarm bells are ringing. Fund managers fear that such a change will erode investor trust. At the same time, they want reform. Some managers say companies are gaming the system. They set low bars on purpose. They clear those low bars every quarter, and their shares zoom. And the numbers support this. Some 80% companies, 80% companies beat their quarterly projections. Clearly, this is not coincidence. But will scrapping the quarterly system work? Well, the UK and Europe have already done it. They require semi-annual reports, basically once in 6 months. Hong Kong also requires semi-annual reports. But in India, we have quarterly rules. Reports must be published within 45 days of the last quarter. And I'm afraid there is no right or wrong here. On the one hand, short-termism is bad. You look at every major company in the world, they thrived because of long-term thinking, not because they were focused on 3 months at a time. And that's true for Tesla, for Apple, for Nvidia, any big company you can think of. On the other hand, investors want transparency, and they are the heartbeat of every market. Let's see which way the US regulator goes. Now let's talk about Africa. It's become the new front line in the global war against terror. Groups linked to the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda are becoming more powerful in Africa. In the past year alone, these groups have killed more than 22,000 people, and their ranks have expanded rapidly. It's not just because of guns or fear. These groups have weaponized technology. They're using Starlink, they're using satellite internet, drones, and even platforms like TikTok. This tech gives them speed, reach, and control. It helps them expand territories, launch remote attacks, and recruit fighters at scale. It also helps them raise money. They've raised millions of dollars so far. Governments are trying to fight back, but their budgets are tight, their forces are stretched thin, and foreign support is fading. Here's a report.
Africa is the new frontline in the global terror war. This is where terrorist groups are growing fastest. And they're not doing it with just guns anymore. They're using drones, Starlink internet, and TikTok. Over the last year, groups linked to Islamic State and Al-Qaeda have killed over 22,000 people across Africa. That's a record. They've grown to an estimated 50,000 fighters, most of them in Nigeria, Somalia, and the Sahel. And this surge is happening as these groups are pushed out of West Asia. Africa has become their new base. This wave of violence isn't just manpower, it's technology. Terror groups in Africa are using Starlink satellite internet. That gives them high-speed, secure connections in remote, lawless areas. With it, they can coordinate attacks, evade surveillance, even manage money and logistics from deep inside forests and deserts. Reports claim both Islamic State and Al-Qaeda's African branches are now using Starlink. Then, there are drones. In late 2024, Nigeria's Islamic State West Africa province, also called ISWAP, used a grenade-armed drone to strike a military base. Since then, they've launched at least 3 more drone attacks. These drones are cheap, hard to detect, and deadly. They let terrorists hit targets without sending fighters. And it's not just battlefield tech. Extremist groups are also on TikTok. They're not just posting videos, they're crafting a message. They frame themselves as providers of justice and security. In places where governments are weak, that narrative works. Experts say this propaganda helps extremists recruit fighters and undermine the state. Terror tech isn't cheap, but these groups are flush with cash. Al-Shabaab in Somalia is estimated to earn over $200 million a year. The Islamic State, in the West Africa province, collects up to $191 million annually. This is from taxes, extortion, and ransom. The money comes from locals, from hostages, and from illegal trade routes. With internet access and encrypted apps, they collect, move, and hide this money easily. This funding fuels expansion. Governments are trying to fight back. West African nations are planning a joint anti-terrorism force. But the original plan, 5,000 troops and billions of dollars in budget, has been cut drastically. Now, they may only field 1,650 soldiers, with a budget of less than $500 million. That's a fraction of what's needed. And in many countries, foreign help is vanishing. France and the US have pulled back. Russia's Wagner Group has stepped in, but they have been largely ineffective so far. More than 2/3 of Islamic State's global activity in 2025 happened in Africa. That's unprecedented. And it shows how these groups are making a comeback. By making most of the instability in Africa. This is a new kind of war. It's not fought just with bullets, it's fought with broadband, with drones, with TikTok and Starlink. And right now, Africa is losing that war.
It started with a chat message. Hours before his arrest, Tyler Robinson typed into a Discord server, "It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this." And what was he talking about? The murder of Charlie Kirk, the American conservative influencer who was killed at a university last week. Robinson confessed to that murder on Discord. On the other side of the world, a different story was unfolding on the same platform. Thousands of young people were protesting in Nepal. They brought down the government. Then came the choice for an interim prime minister, and Gen Z ran a virtual town hall to pick names, again on Discord. So murder in Utah, democracy in Kathmandu, but the two worlds collided in one unlikely arena: Discord. So how did Discord, an app born for gamers, become the stage for both assassinations and revolutions? We'll break it down tonight for you. Starting with the basic question, what exactly is Discord? It is a social media platform. It has around 200 million users. It is one of the most popular ways that gamers communicate online. At its simplest, you can join something called servers. These are digital spaces devoted to anything from anime to homework help to overthrowing a government. Inside these servers are something called channels. These channels split conversations into specific topics with text threads, voice rooms, and even video calls. And this is not like X, where everyone is shouting into the same plaza. Think of Discord more like a sprawling city, a city with millions of locked doors, and you can enter the ones that you are invited to. Some are massive public hubs, but most are small private clubs. So why is Gen Z obsessed with this platform? The first reason is privacy. It's not anonymous, but it's not your Facebook or Instagram either. The second reason is decentralization. Each server has its own rules, its own vibe. The third is community first. Whether it's a study group or a protest, Discord feels intimate. For a generation skeptical of institutions, Discord's semi-chaotic design feels authentic. But how did it go from gaming to politics? Come to think of it, the jump was not that big. Gaming servers were already teaching young people how to gather in a group, so a revolution came almost as the obvious next step. Also, Nepal's government banned most social media apps. That's what in fact triggered the protests. So Discord was the last refuge for the protesters. As for Robinson's confession, that is not new either. In 2017, white supremacists organized a rally on Discord. In 2022, a US shooter posted his racist rant on Discord before live streaming his massacre. So it has been part of the headlines, this platform, it has been in the headlines, mostly for the wrong reasons. And it's not hard to figure out why. Discord is almost impossible to police. There are self-policing servers. Every server has its own moderators. Some are diligent, but most are just teenagers with no training. Plus, there is no mass surveillance. Unlike Facebook, Discord is not scanning every message with AI. That's great for privacy, but it's terrible for spotting a murderer. Also, Discord is reactive, not proactive. It mostly acts when a user reports abuse. In the case of Robinson, the company insists that there was no planning on its servers, just confessions after the fact. This decentralized structure makes Discord a breeding ground for extremism, for child exploitation, and for misinformation. So for Gen Z, Discord may be liberating, but for regulators, it is a logistical nightmare. The question is, will they crack down? And what can the platform do? It's at a crossroads. Keep the hands-off approach, and it may become the preferred tool of extremists. Clamp down too much, and it loses the generation that made it relevant. Either way, the stories of Robinson and Nepal are proof of one thing. Discord is no longer just a gaming app. It is where politics is happening as we speak. When I say mummies, which country comes to mind? Egypt, right? But guess what? The world's oldest mummies have been found in Southeast Asia from burial sites in China, Vietnam, and Indonesia. This is part of new research findings. They feature hunter-gatherers who smoke-dried their dead by placing the bodies over low fires. The oldest sample is 14,000 years old. This is the earliest evidence of mummification. It is older than Egypt and Chile. But it's far from unique. Around the world, communities found their own ways to keep the dead alive. In Egypt, they used salt and resin. In Chile, they used clay and paint. Different methods, same purpose, to honor the dead and to keep them close. Here's a report.
Forget fancy tombs and golden sarcophagi. The earliest known mummification may have been less Pharaoh's glory and more smoky barbecue. New research suggests that hunter-gatherers in Asia were drying out their dearly departed over low fires. This happened reportedly some 14,000 years ago. Instead of sending them off to decay naturally, they folded their loved one into crouched positions. Then they gently smoked them and buried them. Scientists studying burials in China, Vietnam, and Indonesia found charred patches on skeletons that didn't look accidental. Elbows, skull fronts, and legs, the thinner, fleshy bits, bore evidence of heat exposure. These bodies had been carefully smoke-dried before burial. Their tissues were preserved by hours of slow heating. Think of it as ancient humanity's most morbid slow cooker recipe. But beneath the dark humor lies something tender. Smoke drying wasn't a quick process. Families had to tend the bodies reportedly for weeks, even months, keeping the fires burning steadily. Some experts called it a timeless human impulse, the hope that families might remain together forever. But Asia isn't alone. Cultures across the globe have turned death into an oddly inventive art form. The name that is synonymous with mummies and burials is Egypt. The Egyptians didn't just bury their dead. They gave them a full spa package. Think salt scrubs, oil massages, and linen wraps. Basically a 70-day makeover to make sure you look flawless for eternity. Take the Chinchorro people of Chile, who 7,000 years ago out-Egypt the Egyptians. They created the oldest known artificial mummies. They stripped bodies down to the skeleton, rebuilt them with clay and sticks. Then they painted them black or red. Meanwhile, in Siberia's permafrost, nature lent a hand. Bodies froze solid, preserving hair, tattoos, and sometimes even their stomach contents. The famous ice maiden from the Altai Mountains still wears her intricate tattoos with pride, despite being over 2,000 years old. Across the Pacific, Papua New Guinea's Onga people took smoke drying to a new level. They suspended bodies in huts over smoldering fires. Then they perched the mummies on cliffs, watching over villages like eternal guardians. And let's not forget Japan's Sokushin Butsu monks, the men who mummified themselves by slowly starving on nuts and bark, then drinking poisonous tea to deter insects. When they finally passed, their bodies were sealed and later revealed in a perfectly preserved form. What ties these rituals together is not just morbid creativity, but meaning. Whether through smoke, salt, ice, or sheer willpower, cultures have sought to preserve the human form as a vessel for memory, respect, and spiritual continuity. These ancient practices remind us that dealing with mortality is never just about loss. It's also about love, remembrance, and the primal human refusal to let go.
One woman works at a restaurant, another at a private company, a third at a government office, and the fourth is part of a political party. If any of them faces sexual harassment, can they seek justice? Can they demand redressal, like a remedy or compensation? The answer is only 3 of them can, because POSH does not apply to political parties. POSH is India's law to prevent sexual harassment at the workplace, and recently India's Supreme Court heard a plea about it, about bringing registered political parties under POSH. The Supreme Court rejected the plea, meaning women in politics have no legal protection under this law. They cannot seek redressal against sexual harassment under POSH. To understand why, we'll start with the basics. POSH stands for Prevention of Sexual Harassment. The law, called the POSH Act, was passed in 2013. This law addresses sexual harassment at any workplace, whether private or public. It lists out certain duties for employers, all employers, like setting up an ICC. ICC is the Internal Complaints Committee. It is meant to address complaints about sexual harassment. If your company has 10 or more employees, you have to set up an ICC. That is the law. The idea is to ensure a safe work environment. But this law does not apply to political parties. Now, in India, tens of thousands of women are members of political parties. They're lawmakers, they're policy researchers, they're booth workers, admin staff. Women are everywhere. India has 6 national political parties, but only one of them has an ICC, and that is the CPM, the Communist Party of India Marxist. It has an Internal Complaints Committee, or ICC. The other parties have no such body. And these parties give us our leaders, our policy makers, but their female members are left vulnerable to harassment. According to a United Nations survey, about 50% women in Indian politics have faced verbal abuse. 45% have faced physical abuse, especially during election campaigns. 58%, according to this survey, say that perpetrators were party colleagues. Needless to say, this is a big problem. So why don't most political parties have an ICC? Because they have special privileges. They are not considered workplaces, at least not in India. Politics is not supposed to be a job, it is supposed to be a service or a calling. So by law, political parties do not have to set up ICCs, because political parties are not employers and party workers are not employees. That's what the law says. This means political workers have no protections, not under the labor law and not under the sexual harassment law. And that's not all. India's top court says if political parties come under POSH, it will open a Pandora's box, because sexual harassment complaints will be used to blackmail politicians. That's what the Supreme Court has said. And this raises several issues. First of all, yes, with any law as complex as POSH, there is scope for misuse. But does that mean we have no law? Does that mean that political workers are left without protection? Secondly, yes, political parties are not considered employers, but they have more than 10 workers. There is a clear chain of command. Parties have offices, they have hierarchies, they have work hours, they have duties. So why don't they have more guardrails? Thirdly, if political parties cannot be called a workplace, if they cannot come under POSH, then maybe we need some other system to secure them, like in the European Union, where they have a special resolution on violence against women in politics, or Kenya, which has set up a disputes tribunal, or the UK, which has an Equality Act that includes political parties. Why not India? We need solutions tailor-made for our country. Over the years, experts have made a range of suggestions, like a party-wide policy or a better defined code of conduct, which can include setting up a specific disciplinary body, because this is the crux of the matter. Women should be safe in all spaces, and politicians talk about women's safety in their rallies, so why do they forget safety in their parties and in politics itself? For policymakers, the safety of women should be more than just a slogan, both outside the party offices and within their walls. ChatGPT has had a few good years. It was the internet's favorite writer, therapist, and even lover in some cases. But now there's a new favorite in town, and that is Google's Gemini. And what's Gemini doing that ChatGPT cannot? It's the nano banana trend. It has the internet absolutely losing its mind. The tool enables users to transform regular photos into portraits, looking like Bollywood stars. Guess the Ghibli days are far behind us. Take a look at this. Now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. A soda truck falls into a sinkhole in Mexico City. A Russian drone hits a building in Ukraine's Kharkiv, setting the roof ablaze. Papua New Guinea celebrates 50 years of independence with fireworks and drones. And finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 2022, Masha Amini died in the custody of Iran's morality police. She was 22 years old. She was arrested for allegedly not wearing her headscarf properly. Her death sparked protests unlike any the country has seen before or had seen before. Iran responded with force and the crackdown killed more than 500 people. We are leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Firstpost now available in 9 languages on YouTube. English,
Stands at $36 trillion.
French,
Le FMI, comme
German,
Geschäftsführenden Direktor,
Hindi,
$30 trillion ka karjo.
Indonesian,
Pemerintah tanpa pemeriksaan.
Italian,
Sekali radikali.
Japanese,
4 兆ドル以上も
Portuguese,
por causa do próprio balanço patrimonial.
Spanish.
Beautiful bill.
Go to Settings, click on Audio Track and select a language of your choice. Be the first to know what's happening around you in your first language. Firstpost.